So today we will go over bacteria and virus. So some of the important information about bacteria and virus is first you need to identify which one is a living organism and which one is not. Virus is a non-living organism, while bacteria is a living organisms. Okay, so virus is not a living organism because of the following few points. First, it can't do reproductions. It can't respond to external stimuli. It also does not do energy processing. Can't do energy processing. However, it will be able to reproduce and maybe respond to a little bit of external stimuli if there is some sort of host going on, right? So unless there is a host, virus really is just kind of like a sand particle, like a non-living organism, right? It does not live unless it is in some other bodies. So unless there is a host. For bacteria, it can do everything that is of living things, right? It can reproduce, it can respond to external stimuli, it can do energy processing, and it doesn't really need a host, even though it can infect other organisms. Okay. For virus, the basic structure of a virus kind of looks like this. It has a round, kind of like a crystal structure, which we call a protein capsule. And inside the protein capsule has the genetic information. So the genetic information can come in the format of RNA or DNA. So as you can see that the protein capsule, a capsule that's made of protein, is used to protect the genetic information that can be used by the virus to replicate and make more of itself. And remember, a virus needs a host in order to make more copy of itself. So a virus also has something what we call a receptor, right? So it's kind of like a tip that it can inject its genetic information into a host cell, right? So if what I draw here is a bacteriophage, which is a type of virus. So this phage will actually attack bacteria and put the receptor, bind it with the cell surface receptor, cell membrane protein of the bacteria, and the DNA will just move into the bacteria and starts, hijacking the cells and make more of the virus. So receptor. The receptor's function is to bind to the membrane of the host. Okay. So these three things, protein capsule, genetic information, and receptors, are kind of like the common things that you can find in the virus. How about bacteria, right? A bacteria is a prokaryote, meaning that a bacteria does not have a nucleus. It does, however, has a cell membrane, okay, which helps regulate what goes in and out of the cell. Some of the bacteria has a cell wall. So cell wall is kind of like the structural, like maintaining the structural integrity of the cell. Okay. Some of the bacteria has cilia, and some of the bacteria has flagella. And both of them are used for motion and movement. And inside the bacteria is the cytoplasm, right, in which the reactions will take place. It also has DNA. Sometimes its DNA is in circular, right? It's literally a circle, very small circular DNA. We call it a plasmid. And you also has the ribosomes, which is being used to make protein. Another unique structure that you can find on the bacteria is what we call a pilus. So pilus is used for conjugation, in which two bacteria that comes in contact through pilus can exchange their genetic information. So pilus is used to exchange genetic information. Okay, so that's it for the structure of bacteria and virus. Next, some of the typical shape that you can find in the bacteria are, as you can see, bacteria can come in many shapes, but I only expect you to know 3 of them: a circular one, a rod shape, or a spiral version, right? So if it's circular, we call it a coci or coccus. If it's a rod shape, we call it a bacillum. If it's a spiral shape, we call it a spirulum. Okay. For virus, you have different types of virus shape, so we're not going to talk about the shapes of the virus. Some of the example of a virus are, like for example, HIV, right? HIV, a tobacco virus, flu, Zika, and dengue, right? Some of the example of a virus. Some of the example of a bacteria are like, for example, tuberculosis, syphilis, gonorrhea, and Strep aureus. Okay, so these are the example of a bacteria. Next, if you are being infected by a virus, you need to consume antiviral, right? So antiviral will kill virus. If you are infected with bacteria, you need to consume antibiotics. So antibiotics kill bacteria. We also have something what we call a vaccine. So a vaccine is not to cure you from virus. Vaccine prevents, right? It prevents you from being infected by virus. Okay, so virus can infect cells. It has 2 phases in infecting the cells. Either it is infecting it through lysogenic or lytic. In the lysogenic phase, right, a virus will actually stay hidden inside the cells. It will stay hidden in the cells, and it will actually embed its genome, its DNA, right, its genetic information into the host cell's genome. So embed DNA into the host genome. And then later the cell is going to make more virus, and then the virus will come, more copy of the virus will come out of the cells. In the lytic versions, the virus will just hijack the cells to make more protein of the virus, and then eventually the virus will come out of the cell and the cell die, right? So this is how virus replicate itself, right? Make more copy of it. So for bacteria, it can reproduce asexually or it can reproduce sexually. Or in the case, I'll talk more a little bit about sexual reproduction. So for asexual reproductions, right, it's going to reproduce through binary fission, in which a cell of a bacteria becomes bigger and bigger, and eventually it will pop out to become 2 bacterial cells. So these 2 cells will be identical. For sexual reproductions, more about creating genetic diversity by either conjugation or transformation. Conjugation or transformation. Okay. So for conjugation, right, I mentioned it just now already. For conjugation, it is that 2 cells will exchange genetic information, and then for transformation, bacteria will pick out a dead bacteria's DNA and then make it into its own. So there's a difference between conjugation and transformation. Some of the benefits of bacteria can include things like making yogurt, it makes vitamins in the body, it kills other bad bacteria. So a bacteria actually has a lot of functions. Or it can also be used to make like insulin for people with diabetes, or make some human proteins for human to use. So not all bacteria are bad. Some of the bacteria are actually very good. And with that, I conclude the chapter for virus and bacteria.